Welcome to Behind the Visual. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. This is the podcast where I interview all the people responsible for creating all the images and videos you see out in your world every single day. And I am your host, advertising and lifestyle photographer, Mark Hansen. Today, guys, my guest is Joe Lombardo. Joe is the CEO of Curated Artist, which is a full-service photography and live-action artist agency with talent represented in the U.S. and Europe. You can see their work at curatedartist.com. So be sure and check that out. And here we go with Joe Lombardo.
The truth of the matter is you need to be talking to art producers now more than ever, because not soliciting, I would say just a conversation with some key buyers just to see what they're going through on the other side of this, on the flip side of this, you know?
Yeah.
The challenge, of course, is that when this is all done and over with, there's going to be such a flood of work that has to be done for the ad industry. My hope is that we bounce back doing better work, more honest work than we were doing before.
Yeah.
By that, I mean Coca-Cola and car companies and everybody is going to be coming to your assistance right now. You know, a flood of advertising is going to be like, we're here for you. But the truth of the matter is that we've seen through the crash of everything, how delicate our balance is in the world. And if we're not learning the lessons of what a pause looks like, we're not going to be creating something better than we had before. We're going to be going to business as usual. And business as usual wasn't working. It was only working for this many people, not the broad range of what we see is out there. So that's my fear. And, you know, as an agent, I want to be prepared for the moment of what would we create now? That makes sense?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. You know, I completely agree. Because I was going to ask you what you thought that photographers and agents should be doing at this time. So yeah, I mean, to try and get ahead of this thing. So when it all, hopefully the floodgates open and all this work that's been backing up, builds up, kind of starts happening. Cause I was talking to a photo producer the other day, and she said that she's crazy busy with licensing right now. And then she has a shoot that as soon as this is over, she's got to go on a shoot. And I had a client, the other day, we were supposed to do a shoot, and of course it's been cut off. You know, so I don't know if it's going to happen or not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of waiting to see.
I've got a video shoot and a week of still life on hold because of all of this. And and what's interesting is you don't want to be the guy that says, yeah, sure. Like, you know, we'll take our, you know, it's really risky out there right now to be like the guy that says, oh, we all need the work, so let's do it. And you get an assortment of backlash from producers and stuff like that. So my main answer to your question as to what agents and photographers should be doing right now is the answer I would give you pretty much on the regular as to what any of us should be doing. If you are not in conversation with your top 20 people, and I mean by conversation, I don't mean sending them an email, doing an e-blast, telling them how fabulous you are, telling them all the projects you just did 6 months ago. That's not the kind of conversation that we should be having. The kinds of conversations that we should be having are, you know, your top 20 people should really go something like this. Hey, art buyer X. Hey, client B. What are you dealing with right now on your side? And let them give you the information that you need to, you know, take from that conversation, and then use that to kind of prove out your marketing later and design your marketing around that. Everything right now is going to have to be about solving problems of what this is, because there will be many of them. Because there's still going to be fear. There's still going to be a chance for an upswing in the virus. For example, it will go away. And, you know, as statistics have said, it's chances are it will come back. We don't know if all surfaces can be wiped down, if all product is going to be good, if everything's going to be all right. And so, imagine that you're on that photo shoot with that art producer that booked it like straight away, and suddenly three clients or a client gets sick, a photographer dies. We have to be really vigilant, even when we're back in action, as to COVID appropriate shooting. Because it's not just going to be business as usual. This industry should never go back to the way that it was prior.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that they thought, and I don't know how true I don't know how much I believe this, that they thought, like on film shoots, you have to have a medic on set. And
100%.
they were talking about possibly making that they could see that possibly being a thing on still shoots. But I don't know, a lot of still shoots have the kind of budget to afford to have a medic on set. I think a lot of clients will be just like, we're not doing it, but be careful.
I think as an agency-wide mandate, I think it just needs to be something that we, as agents, we have a lot of power. We have, I think, and by that, when I say power, what I mean is in community, when we're all holding hands together saying, this is what we are willing to do, this is what we are not willing to do. If more agents got together, and we tried to do this years ago, by the way, we had like an agents forum where we were all sort of talking to our photographers, and we would collect sort of the data from what was going on in the industry. And then as a rule, we would kind of go out into the industry and say, here are some of the things that we've seen. Here are some of the things that we want to avoid. In a triple bid situation, maybe it's a possibility of like the agents holding hands and saying, hey, my guy is bidding this. Are you bidding this? Like knowing the players and then making sure that the right person gets the job. And so that we're not underbidding the job, but we're all sort of maintaining the same level of fees, so that it really truly does become about the artwork and not a price war, who can do cheaper. So we tried doing that years ago, and it was somewhat successful. And I think the agents that participated in that kind of behavior, but now have won, really did do some justice in the industry. I feel like we've gotten so far away from that, where people are so afraid of not getting work, that it's become more competitive between agents, more competitive between photographers. And I think that all needs to go away, Mark. I think as a direct result of the pandemic and what we've seen is that we are absolutely stronger when we are in community, having conversations about what is going on, and then standing together to make changes that we need to change.
Well, I think you're right.
One example really quickly, and I'll let you, I want you to respond. But one example is, on TV shoots, they don't need to provide backup on anything, right? For example, you do a TV shoot, you're a fixed bid, this is how much money you have. But because most of our photo shoots have a motion component, we are still sworn to, provide all of these backup proceeding for everything. And it's like a layer of work that film people don't need to do, but yet we're still commanded to do video. We still have the same standards to uphold in the motion spots. Maybe they're not as high budget, but we're still required to go through like, a week of paperwork retrieval after the job is done, which is consuming everybody's time, agents' time, producers' time, or whatever. If we just had like a signed off estimate, boom, and we know that we're shooting motion, why do agents have to provide on still and motion shoots all the backup? That's just an example of if we all stood together and said, here's what we've seen, and we come together as a community and say, this is what we would suggest, we can make change. I think it's just got to be making powerful requests right now and having powerful conversations with our art producers to ask them, like, what are you dealing with? Would you like to have to be, isn't it just another layer of work that you have to do on the other side of this that you don't even want to do? Like, asking those types of questions give us a little bit more fodder to work with as to how we can improve the business.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it would be nice if you could get everybody to stick with that. Because I know as photographers, we've talked about it before. And I even had a photographer call me and just bitch me out one time because he thought I was underbidding something, and I wasn't. I had made a comment to somebody that there was, There was basically there was a client and I had some issues with whoever was working for them or shooting or something. I said, just tell them I'll shoot it for like $1,000. And I thought it was a half day, whatever, easy kind of deal. I didn't know it was a 3-day shoot that was coming up. And I just said it to a friend of mine who knew the client, just as kind of like just threw it out there. I didn't think they were actually going to go tell the client. Well, they went and told the client, and I get a call from one of the photographers that I knew who was bidding on the job. He called me and bitched me out for it. And I had no idea that I was even in the mix at the time. And then he told me what it was. I explained to him the deal. I said, I would never have shot this thing for that amount of money. Do not, that's not what I would do. It would never happen for that. And so when they did finally call, that client actually finally called me and asked me to actually bid on it. I bid it high just to make sure I didn't get the job because I didn't want, everybody thinking that I did that. But there's so many photographers that we talk about, like, don't underbid, don't go low on these things to get these jobs because it hurts everybody down the road. But there's so many people I think who don't understand that, or they're so afraid of not getting the job that they won't do it. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
And they're just afraid they won't get the job. So they will underbid it. And then it ends up hurting everybody. Or like when 2008 hit, all my clients were like, we don't have any money. We don't have any money. Can you drop your price? Can you drop your price? And you go, all right, well, I've worked with you before. I'll drop my price, for a little while. I had one client, it took me 10 years to get them to come back up to what I was shooting for before all that happened.
Yep. And that's exactly what happens. That's the curve.
Yeah. So it's like once you go down, it's very hard to go back up.
Yeah. Once you go down, it's really hard to go back up. It really is. But I think, so other than having the conversations of what are you dealing with, and that what that looks like is, when this is all over, or like, are you bidding jobs now? Do you have things down the line that need to be planned? One of the suggestions that I had made to photographers straight away is create a stock image library now on your website. Just an image library that is a link to things that you own the rights to, you own the models on, and be sending that out to your brands and to your buyers and saying, in the event that you right now, this becomes a stock purchasing time frame for you. I wanted you to have original artwork that you could purchase potentially for any number of clients, and here's this image library that I put together for you. So everything's released, or that you can get releases on things in case they were bought. But like that's one segment of the marketing. I think the other thing that will be critical right now for photographers to do is exactly kind of what you're doing. And I have to applaud you for this podcast. I've been watching some of the episodes and I think it's really valuable. But one of the things that I think you need to be doing are, right now, Instagram live feeds. Inviting art producers onto Instagram live feeds to have especially if you want to grow your Instagram following, becoming an asset beyond, to your community of photographers. So, start friending your competition. Invite them to your live feeds. Have conversations with people that are in your community. Because a lot of people have a lot of questions. And also helping photographers that are not at the level that you're at get to your level. Like proving out that in a time where everybody's unsure, making yourself a greater asset and kind of showcasing how you did something, for example. Maybe there's some younger photographers that don't know how you managed to do a video and still shoot, all at once, and they just don't know how to do it, or they haven't, need gear information, or making yourself of value to your community, I think is truly right now one of the most important things that you could be doing. It's better marketing than, touting yourself as being the best lifestyle guy in the Midwest or whatever. It's like, and showing what it is that you've done. And then the other thing that I think from a marketing perspective, I think could be done if you were thinking about things in marketing if you're a photographer, for example, that shoots pharma and you're in and out of hospitals all year, or shoots agriculture, and that's what it is that you do. There are tons of not-for-profit organizations right now that are absolutely hurting, or organizations that protect farmers, organizations that, hospitals that need masks. If you are a corporate shooter in the hospital, in the pharma industry, and you service hospitals as a general rule, find an organization that you are aligned with that helps get these people masks or gear or whatever. Start promoting some of the hospitals. If you've photographed a particular hospital that you are really fond of and were really sweet to you, and you know that they need masks, like, start to do, showcase your work, but then attach it to something that's about giving back, and giving back to the community that needs it the most right now. So I would say, just in terms of what people could be doing, if you could be combating the virus in some way by using your artwork and attaching it to a not-for-profit, I think that is just a perfect example of how we take and give back at the same time, or that we want to acknowledge our work, but we're also doing some good in the community. So figuring out what projects also are going to come out of this, and really thinking about the heroes of this story, which are our daily workers. I mean, be thinking and planning of, how do we really salute them after all this is over? How do we tell their stories? Because that's going to be powerful messaging afterwards. And I think opportunistically, I'm not thinking opportunistically about this, but I do think at the very heart of what is American, we want to know what those stories look like. We want to know what the struggle looked like, so that we don't make the same mistakes again. Or we want to know what the struggle looks like so that we can have a comeback in some way better than we were before. And I think, in terms of testing or wanting to, implement creative ways of thinking around this, is really finding ways to honor some of that storyline that we're all feeling right now. So those are some suggestions as to what I would do, but mainly it's picking up the damn phone. It's not an email. It's not a promo. It's nothing like that. It's pick up the damn phone, get human with your top 20 people. And from those moments that you have with them, from the people that have children, I mean, there may be breakdowns and breakthroughs on any of these calls that will inform how you are to behave moving forward. And those conversations, whether they're held on Instagram Live, whether they're aired on a podcast, are invaluable pieces of information. But coming across as a marketer, as an agent right now, to me feels like death. Like, I can't do it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can it
asshole.
just seems weird. It just seems wrong. Yeah. Like you're trying to take advantage of this whole thing. It just doesn't seem completely right to me, and I think a lot of people get that, but then I still see some stuff where, it's just like, wow, you're just completely trying to.
My Instagram feed is littered with people that are, look, I need to see beauty too. My Instagram feed right now is going back on years of memories that I've had, where it's like, okay, I remember there's an outside world. I remember that there's sunrises and sunsets. I remember that there are beaches to walk on. There are things that I'm littering my mind with to just keep me inspired for, like, what this is going to, just remembering that there's more than these four walls. And that I did things and they were fun, and, and I had friends that I could see physically and hug and spend time with. So there's a little bit of that going on for me. What I see, every time I see a rep promoting right now, I just want to throw up in my mouth. I do. Yeah. And and I'm a super, super honest guy when it comes to how I feel about things. And I think anybody that's capitalizing on this particular period of time is probably not somebody that I would want to work with down the line. And not because they're not being smart. Like, I think that there are some really smart promotions going on right now. I think this photo studio, which will remain nameless, that is figuring out how you can shoot during this time by putting up glass shields and honoring, I suppose, social distancing on set, and saying, spewing out to the world, we can still be shooting right now. And here's an aerial view of our studio, looking down on how we've COVID-proofed this. Is so anti the science of what this could possibly be, because this virus can mutate. We've seen it mutate several times already. So we don't really have all the science yet. So for anybody to say, we've got your shooting solution right now, really makes me want to shame them publicly, but I won't.
Yeah. Well, I saw something on Instagram, and I think it was Instagram, and a photographer had put up how they can continue shooting and do it remotely. And they had this robot that could go around the studio and had a camera on it, so the art director could watch what's going on. But the only person staying 6 feet away from everybody was the photographer and the art director, who's in a completely different place, because you still had the makeup artist working on the model. You still had the stylist there who had to work on the model. You still had the assistants who were standing over there near the lights and doing all that. So to me, it just seemed like, okay, you're trying, you think this is going to work, but the only person safe is the art director. Everybody else is still in this confined area. And yeah, it's less than 10 people, but all you need is one of them to have it. And then everybody who was in the studio that day could end up having it. So it didn't make sense to me. And I showed it to my wife, and she was just like, that's just dumb.
It's completely irresponsible. It's completely irresponsible, and it could kill. And that's the thing. It's like, that is the conversation that I'd like to pierce at some point. At what point are we so desperate that we'll accept any kind of behavior as being okay because we're afraid of not being able to pay our bills, not being able to survive? That fear is exactly what this virus was intended to do. It is our job to stay vigilant in this time and to protect the lives of the people around us. That is, in comparison to the almighty dollar, that is truly the purpose right now for every single person in our industry. And anybody who violates it, can I say that I blame them for trying? No, I understand the fear. It's legitimate.
Absolutely.
But I would really, listen, if you're isolated and it's a still life shoot, and you're isolated with your wife that happens to be a prop stylist, and you're a photographer, and you have still life coming to be shipped to you, and the still life can be sanitized and before it enters, and then everybody's working remotely and it's a still life job, I'm almost inclined to say, yay.
Good. Yeah, to me that makes sense. Yeah, to me, I think that's something you can do and get away with.
In fact, I'm trying to orchestrate a 5-day shoot on that principle right now, but there are still some issues, right? Insurance. Well, if that product is tainted in any way and somebody in the studio then gets it from the product, even if it's disinfected, they think it is perfectly fine to shoot on set, and whatever could happen, and they get it, insurance doesn't cover any of the liability there. And clients are not going to put it on their policy either. So we have you still have this infinitesimal amount of doubt. And if there's any amount of doubt, I say no go. It costs lives.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think everybody just needs to, as much as you can, just stay calm. Start looking forward to when this is over. Hopefully understand that when this is over, there's going to be a lot of work coming in that's all backed up from now that needs to be shot. And hopefully clients understand that I would think that they have marketing budgets that are on hold at the moment. So they're still going to have that money. They're still going to have those shoots that need to be done. So hopefully there's going to be this flood of shoots that come in, and everybody will be busy, and you'll start making your money back, and it's all going to be okay. I think if, people can just relax a little bit, try and take what you can from, the PPP loans, the unemployment loan, whatever, as much as you can out of that stuff, and then you just move forward.
100%. I just feel like that is the goal. I also, you know, I also question a little bit about what will we create when this is all over? What is
Yeah.
messaging? When the whole world is paused, what are we going to say afterwards as advertisers, as people that promote product and brands? What will we say? Um,
I mean, I was actually thinking about that today. I sat down for a minute, I was watching TV and some commercials came on and I started thinking, what is this going to be like when this is all over? What's going to change? How's advertising going to change because of this? Are there going to be big changes in it, in the imagery you see or the way things are presented, or is it going to end up going back to the same? But I think there's going to be some kind of change, whether it's small or whether it's a large change. I'm just not sure what it's going to be. But was having that thought this morning, trying to run it
it,
through my head. What's going to happen here with all this?
it is indeed a big question on my mind, and I think we could do another podcast on that completely, because I've got a ton of ideas about it. Probably not going to be the most popular guy in the room talking about that post COVID world and what that looks like. But I've noticed, for example, a lot of inequity happening kind of across the boards that that only a pandemic like this can really evidence. And so it makes me just feel like there not only needs to be changes, but the messaging up to the world needs to be different. Because as much as I want us to go back to work and industry to continue, we have a planet that is healing right now. And our CO2 emissions are down. I've done a shit ton of work in the sustainability movement. And, consumerism and consumption and sustainability are counterintuitive to each other.
Well, they were saying because of this, you could actually see fish in Venice, in the rivers in Venice now, in the canals
Blue
that were before you
skies.
couldn't.
Yeah, you can see blue skies in downtown LA,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
essentially smog before,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. I had a
Uh,
friend of mine put up a thing the other day and showed blue skies, like rain and no cars. And here's what you get. And it was just this beautiful blue sky with clouds and everything.
and Mark, that's what I want to know. What are we saying about that? And how are we addressing that? Because statistics show, and there's been satellite views from Europe of the Earth right now, and the ozone layer
Mm-hmm.
actually repairing itself. And I'm going to get very tingly and very emotional about this, but because it's been something that's been on my mind as a marketer, as somebody who's done this job for so long. I started to feel really guilty because I was helping people sell a dream, a dream about like have this house and have these products and have these things, which I take nothing away from our advertising community to want and our brands to want to do. But I was starting to feel like, oh God, we have so much pollution and we have so much going on in the world that is killing the very place that we have to exist on. How are we going to rewind that massive ball of stuff that has no place to go anymore? And how are we going to fix the air? And I've done a motion spot that you'll see on the climate movement. I've gone to every movement from the Women's March to the climate movement marches, and I've got a lot of information that's kind of stuck and fights against the fact that I'm an agent, in a business trying to service the industry. So I hope that message about the earth getting a reprieve, the air, like being able to breathe, the lungs of the earth being able to breathe, and our connection to nature. If I showed you what's going on outside of this window right now, squirrels are playing with each other I had a squirrel walk up to my dog this morning, like this close, and they were like sniffing each other. this morning. And it was
Oh,
kind of
wow.
the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. They never get that close. You know, they run, they scamper,
Yeah.
but a baby squirrel came like up to my dog and started like having a conversation this morning. I've seen birds just flying in the air, kind of twirling around each other. The grass is greener in this area. And I'm in New Jersey, the Garden State, and I'm in a particularly beautiful area. North Arlington tends to be really, it's just got cherry blossoms and maple wood trees, and everything has a vibrancy to it that it did not have before. The green is so much greener. We have grass in this unit in this around this area that's just burnt out from summer, you know, and it
Yeah.
never kind of grows back to that healthy state before. There's nothing but green, overgrown, lush, beautiful thing. The birds are singing so loudly out my windows every morning that you literally can hear them. If you're listening, if you're present and you're still, you can really, if you're not worried about what's coming next and what am I going to do next, you can literally hear them like a symphony every morning. I don't think I've ever had an experience like that before. And so that's something that I would love to address, I think, on another podcast. But more importantly, will advertising, I always say, if the planet had an advertising agency, what would that look like? If the
Yeah.
planet literally could have an ad agency working for it, what are the truths that we'd speak
Would you see there was
about?
somebody put a meme up and it was, if climate change had the same PR person that COVID-19 had, it would be a completely different world.
That's an amen right there, my brother. And truly, 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 when this is all over, as an agent, I have been doing so much research on brands that are really working in the sustainability side of things. So it will be an absolute must for me to market and target those particular brands that are consciously aware of their carbon footprint. And this is something I've already been doing this research for months prior, but I will absolutely urge all photographers that I work with to be trying to market and target those people that have a message that speaks to, we're doing the best we possibly can, not just to sell product, but to keep our earth clean, and to produce what we're producing in a way that honors the environment. And that's, if we don't walk out of this with that kind of messaging, I'm not so sure I want to do it anymore. You know, like I know that we have to go back to business as usual to some degree. But I think when I see how much the earth is healing from this break, I would think that it would be time for us to start thinking about how we make things that are better for us, better
Yeah.
for our children, better for our sense of consumption and monitoring what that looks like, and that we make things and build things that actually don't, that restore the economy, that restore the environment, not take from it. So a restorative economy is something that I feel needs to be the byproduct of a COVID-19.
I think you'll definitely see more of that for
Yeah.
sure. I think you have to. How did you become a rep? How did you become an agent, a photographer's agent?
These are good. This is a good question. I went to a party. Uh, I went to a
Okay.
party. I was going to be an attorney. That was,
Really?
I worked for the United States Attorney's Office when I was 16 years old, and I was en route to go to Seton Hall Law School to become an attorney. And you know, you want the story, I'm going to let you know the
Yeah. Oh,
story.
I want to
I
hear it.
was coming out at the time.
Okay.
And when I was
And
like,
how old were you at this time?
I was 19, but when I was coming out, so I had just
Right.
graduated. I had been at the U.S. Attorney's Office for 3 years, and I was just starting college, and I was in my second year of Seton Hall University, and I was kind of doing what every, you know, guy that's coming out that doesn't tell his family. You know, I was going into the city secretly, you know,
Right.
going to the clubs, trying to find out where the boys were, trying to find out where my people were, and not, so my studies started to suffer a little bit. But more importantly, I had a coming out experience where I was forced to come out of the closet from guys that knew that I was gay identified, and wound up telling my parents in this very weird way.
Did they
And
do this to get back at you or something, or they?
yeah, it was a weird thing. But these guys were also gay, but they wanted to out me to my parents because they knew I wasn't out to them. And when that happened, I had to have the conversation with my parents. And that what that looked like was we accept you, but you can't be that under our roof. So what that meant was I left college and I headed into the city to take my chances in a big city. And I'll never forget it. I met Lori Watson of the workbook through a friend of a friend, actually through
Wow.
my
Okay.
best friend. She was dating one of my best friends at the time. And I met Lori, and I said to Lori, I have no place to live right now. I can't be home and be me. So I need to figure out what I'm going to do, and go into the city and live on people's couches until I can figure it out. Lori took me in. I lived on her couch for, it could have been a year. But during that time, she introduced me to the workbook, to the Black Book. I started to go to the photo workbook a long time ago, did these incredible mixers, which I swear to God, if we don't get back to doing mixers again and start getting people in a room to talk after all this is over, like social media notwithstanding, if we're not becoming more social after this, I don't know what this COVID is teaching us. But Workbook did a genius thing in the past where they did mixers. And Lori had introduced me to a female photographer that was her reportage person that would go and photograph the events. And she said, you need money right now. You're waiting tables and bartending while you're in the city. Why don't you learn a little bit about lighting and become like a second assistant or something like that, where you back up this photographer. So of course I trained with this photographer. I suck as an assistant, by the way. I'm so horrible. I could carry stuff, but I mean, other than that, I was not a good assistant. But I was filled with vim and vigor, and that's why people usually like to have me around, because I'm excited. I get excited, if you hadn't noticed,
Yeah.
about pretty much everything in the visual arts. And Lori knew that. So I went to a party, a workbook party, and my only job was to hold the lighting at while people were being photographed, and then after, when the lighting, back to the photographer, and take down a list of everybody's names and who they were at the party. So the workbook would come out with a book afterwards, which
Oh
basically
wow.
documented, or like a zine, where they documented who was at the party, what they did, what agency they were with, and who appeared in the picture. So I worked the room because either people didn't want to be photographed, or they were drinking or whatever. So my job was to make sure that I got everybody engaged, got them ready for their photo, because the photographer wasn't particularly personable.
Okay.
She's a great photographer, but not particularly the woman that was going to get everybody jazzed for their photo. So my job was to get them jazzed, hold the light, get their names, and write them down. And nobody knew who I was. I was an unknown in the industry. So people started to ask around as to who I was. Rob Bacall was one of those guys, and said to me during the end of the night, he handed me his card and he said, "You would be a fantastic agent. Call me." And I got another business card from Charlie Mariah, a photographer who also wanted me as a studio manager. Said, "You'd be an amazing studio manager." I also sucked as a studio manager, by the way. Got those, started with Charlie for a little while. Charlie was a great guy. I learned a lot from him, but a still life studio was not my jam. I'm a people guy. I've always been a people guy. Charlie and I got along really, really well. But after a period of time, I had gone to visit Rob, and I said, "I don't really know if I'm a great studio manager. I don't think I'm that as detail oriented as I need to be for a still life guy.
Right. Yeah.
And you really want me talking to people. You want me out there presenting work. And I had a really great graphic design eye. I had a really good marketing forte. And Rob took me on and trained me from ground up. I mean, I launched so many intern programs with him. We worked together for 3 years. And, you know, as you know, I worked my way into the business. I then started a fashion agency after that. Then the fashion agency was getting ready to kind of close down, and another business was coming in from Rochester that wanted to kind of bring their photographers into the marketplace and make them more of a New York presence. So then I was hired by that company for another 3 years. So I tend to have this 3-year stint in the business as I grow into different fields, because they were more corporate. I did fashion. With Rob was more of a generalized agency. But yeah, I went to a party. And I
Wow.
drank a lot.
It sounds like it worked out for you.
It worked out great.
Are there any jobs or any photographers that just really stand out to you as exciting or your favorites or anything like that?
I have to tell you, my career is littered with people that I saw something in their work that nobody else was doing. I never wanted to be an agent that represented just a person that could do what anybody else could do. So fashion generally allows you to play in that genre, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really a fashion boy. I faked being a fashion boy really, really well. I really did for a while, but I'm not, unless you're in that engine all the time, talking to stylists, being around that thing. It's highly egoic. It's really, really, it's kind of a rat race. It's really hard to stay in it and sustain for a really long time. I take nothing away from any agent that can do it. I think it's genius. I love fashion. I think that they can do things that can push the envelope so far, and really create sort of a land of illusion and wonder. And I love that about it. But I was not great at it, and I knew that I wasn't going to be. So I chose people that did things that were really, really technically difficult, conceptually difficult. I love conceptual photography. I have 2 loves in my world is conceptual photography, still life based.
Mm-hmm.
And I love reportage that can be really taken to a next level. So that found moment that can really be nuanced in a way that nobody knows. I also have grown to love food so much, especially in the downturn, in this COVID moment. I am becoming top chef here in the house. But I've also learned from other food photographers really the magic of ingredients. And so I have a real love for food. But where I started was I loved conceptual photography, and I loved the nuance of reportage done really, really well. So to answer your question, you know, we can talk about the greats, but everybody already knows about them. I'd love to talk more specifically about photographer directors now that are doing things like the Voorhees, Adam and Robin down in Austin, Texas. Aside from being environmentally conscious, having their own bee farm, raising their own chickens, like in their, you know, church that they redid, they really understood what it meant to be integrated photographers that shoot motion and stills. And the mind of these people, when I tell you their sketchbook was so inspired about, you know, because they started in editorial, right? And so editorial oftentimes really needs you to come with, here's this thing, here's this political crisis, here's this new technology, here's this scandal, here's this whatever, and we want to have a conversation about what that looks like, but we want to translate it into food, or we want to translate that into something conceptual in a still life genre. And they truly took it to a whole new level. And we're so prepared for the motion component that they really started to, like, they work with robots in their studios and, you know, in their motion piece. Like
Oh,
they
wow.
went from these editorial people, and I used to rep them, so I know them personally. They went from these editorial photographers shooting at building at all these sets, you know, husband and wife team, building all these sets, to really becoming an asset to an ad agency where it's like, we have this idea, but we'd love to hear your take on it. The mind of, so instead of coming to them with a concept, it's like, or with here's the ads.
Right. Yeah.
It became partnering with them for their creative minds. And so that is something that I just find is, those are the types of people. And Mark, you and I have worked together in as a coach rep kind of situation in terms of these. And so it's those moments that I say to you, like, nobody else is going to get this moment like you got this moment, Mark. Like that you do a smile, for example, or you do a nuanced moment where you're really seeing how, even when they're cast and not real families, how you're able to embrace a moment and really see and really take joy and show people what joy really looks like in a nuanced, special way. That's the kind of reportage that I really like. Not to you know, honor my interviewer a little bit,
Well, I appreciate it.
but it is in those moments that I look to see really where the metal is, where the rubber hits the road with somebody. It's that finding, like, you do joy better, Mark, than any person I've met in the genre of that. Another reportage gentleman, Dominique Palumbo, is, I started him in, I found him, I followed him. I found him in the first page of the workbook, you know, 20 years ago. And I said, that's the guy. He's got this weird sort of ability to have a foreground, a middle ground, a background, and everything's telling a story all at once. And I had never seen work like that before. So I literally I called workbook, I called Lori at the workbook, and I said, this guy that's at the front of the book, who is he? I don't see that he has a rep. And she said, that's Dominique Palumbo. And I was like, do you know him? How can I meet him? And she said, he doesn't have a rep. He's probably going to shoot you down. So I'm just letting you know, you're young. He's probably going to say no, but he's shooting at Milk Studios today. I happen to know that he's at Milk. I took that damn workbook. I went to Milk Studios and I waited outside the door of the studio until the end of his shoot. And I opened up the book and I said, my name is Joe Lombardo. I saw this work in the workbook. I'm a nobody. I know that you shoot fashion. I know that you do all this stuff, but this thing that you do is something that I want to represent. And I would love it if you'd give me an opportunity to represent you. And he totally said no. At first, I stayed with it for a couple weeks. He let me kind of work with him. Like, I said, okay, don't let me be your official rep just yet. Let me prove myself to you, and give me a month. And he gave me a month, and I scored him his biggest job he ever had. That
Oh, wow.
month. And then he signed with me. But more importantly, it's the work that he does with dancers. So he has now decided that and I also worked with him on helping him become the director that he is, but it's how he uses dancers as talent to use movement to express a concept. So he is conceptual with movement and people, and has from fashion to what's that, sleep number beds. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he can use movement to almost bring any concept to life. So he's not just a master of dance and photographing and capturing motion in dance. He's a master of movement, and how many things metaphorically can we say using movement. So those two, I would say, are really favorites of mine, because it takes a nuanced problem solver to kind of, I think now is the time more than ever to have agencies look into somebody that's going to be an asset to their creative process, not just an execution person. And so that's what I look for in photographers. So those two, I would say. I've got others. I've got a ton of others, but I don't want to take 3 hours for your podcast.
Well, how do you think that relationship, or how do you like for that relationship to work between you and the photographer? What do you think that the agent should do for the photographer and the photographer should do for the agent, or they should both do to push their careers forward, or get those next jobs and that kind of thing? Because I know there's so many photographers, I think, who think if I can just get an agent, then I can sit on my ass and don't have to do anything, and they'll get me a job, and then I'll go and shoot it. And then I know agents, like, I have photographers, because I have a friend of mine who was an agent for 25, 30 years in New York, and he's now doing movies, and he's the continuity person on these sets and all this kind of stuff. So he's out of it now. But I remember him telling me one time he had a photographer. He'd call the guy at 11 o'clock because he needed something, and he hadn't heard from him. He'd call him at 11 a.m. and the guy's still sleeping, and it would just piss him off. Yeah. So what do you think that relationship should be like between the photographer and the agent?
Let me first start off by saying that we agents get a bad rap in a world that is Instagrammable. When everyone is a brand and growing their social presence and whatever, and the shift of focus tends to go like, what's your Instagram account? How many followers do you have? It's like, well, I'm Insta famous, so like I don't really need an agent. I kind of need to learn the process a little bit from an agent, and then I can kind of take this show on my own. And that tends to be some sort of a trend in a younger millennial photographer. I think agents are much more than that. And I think unless you're absolutely ready to be in a partnership with your agent, do not get one. Stay a lone wolf until you're ready to marry. And when I say marry, I mean it's communication straight down the line. It's creating a plan straight down the line. And Mark, I don't know if you and I have done this work together, but we will, because this is part of what I do as a consultant too, is we kind of lay out a structure for your success. We are not just somebody to complain to. We are also not gods that can anticipate every single behavior in a market that's going to happen. We're supposed to have our noses to the ground. It's much more difficult to do that in a world that is existing in a digital space. Now I'm thinking conversations will begin to happen more now than ever. But I think that you have to be prepared to fight each other a little bit and disagree. And you have to be the sort that like wants to do the work for yourself and build your brand individually. Make sure that you have your own plan in place, your newsletter, your marketing plans, your own marketing plan that you're spending your money on doing for yourself. Working that out first. The agent has to have a marketing plan for the photographer and the agency at large. It's always an agency that becomes an asset. The agencies that become an asset have planned well their group of photographers. They've niched them well. They have a marketing plan that broadly addresses the agency and then also addresses you. But you have to be an entity of yourselves, independent from one another, have to be able to survive on your own and have those plans in place. But then you've got to come together. And that coming together is really where you want to fight, disagree, make up, make the plan, hash it out, hammer it out. And there's got to be accountability on both sides and a shit ton of conversation. If you can't reach me as an agent, or I have some kind of idea that I don't need to be accessible to my people, then I'm not worth my commission. You have to be boots on the ground as an agent now. You cannot be, um, there is no laissez-faire. You do you, I'll do me. If my people, if I have 5 people on the roster, Monday is John, Tuesday is Sarah, Wednesday is Bill. Everybody's got to have that personal time with their agent to do the work about where you want to go. And every agent should have a plan that is tried, worked, done well for other people, and can prove it. And then the artist has to say, like, I've got clients. I've built up my business that looks like this. For that program that you're going to share with me, and for the momentum that you've built up with all of your other people that I'm going to share in the benefit of, here's my share. Here's what I'm willing to invest in the agency. Here's what I'm willing to invest in you, because you've come with a plan. You've come and sort of proven that you've done this for other people consistently over the years or whatever. But be prepared to give and take in the relationship, and be prepared to talk a lot, because now after COVID, everything changes. And it really starts, Mark, I think, in understanding how the agent wants to work, knowing how much your agent wants to work, and me knowing how much you want to work. If you've got kids, if you've got vacation time that you need to plan, if you've got like a certain time that you just shut down during the day, I want to know that. I want to know how much you want to dedicate to the time to do certain things, so that I can prepare and lay a groundwork for you to not have to do certain things. That kind of thing is a marriage. It's a conversation that if you think that you just fit into everybody is different. Every photographer needs different things. Their lives look differently. So one plan for a person doesn't work for another plan. So that until you're prepared to have the conversation of, how do you want to work? What works best for you? And come up with an accountability plan to make you stay on course, so that you have your free time. You've got your time that you need to be sick when you're sick, that you need to spend time with your kids. Until you have that oftentimes emotionally driven conversation with somebody, you're not ready for an agent relationship in the way that I would want to suggest it to the world of photography right now. I've been on the winning side of that argument and on the losing side of that argument many, many times. But the one thing that I've gotten out of all of these years is we are both so valuable. You're not just a numbers game for me. Your life, if you're any good, and if you have any amount of flippin' soul, your life means something to me. So maintaining the way that you need to live to create great things, and to look at the map of what your life looks like, is the agent's first job. To say, how much time do you actually have to be the person that you want to be in the marketplace? Then you plan your marketing plan around those number of hours. That's the new way of doing work. How much do you need rest? How much do you need family? And really plan the remaining hours. And I mean really looking at a day, to a week, to a month, to a year, and really like boiling it down to, what times do you really work best? How much do you want to put in? Do you want to work on the weekends to test? Having those conversations helps you lay that out. If you think you're an island unto yourself, you're not. Agents that are any good are the agents that are having these types of conversations, I think, in my opinion, humble as it is.
No, I agree. I completely agree, because I think you're right, because I've had agents that are more like that, and that's where it was more of that partnership, and you got that work. And then I've had ones that you never talked to, or you rarely talked to, and that you didn't get anything. And I think also, as photographers, a lot of times we seem to think that we are on our own, and we're not, we don't have these teams of people around us to partner with.
Yeah.
So I think having an agent that's willing to do those things and talk to you, I think helps, because it brings out sometimes, because there are times where I think, oh, I did this. This is great. This is the way it should be. This is my idea. I like it. And then I'll show it to a art buyer friend of mine, or, a creative director friend or even my wife, and they'll look at it and go, yeah, this is not good,
Right.
or this is good, but this should not be in here. Can you get rid of that? Or can you find another shot like that? So I think having those people that you can talk to, that you can trust to tell you the truth, which I think for me is a huge thing, for somebody to be able to tell me this sucks, don't ever show it to me again or do that again, I think is big, because you don't want somebody that's supposed to be your partner in this thing going, yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
And you look at it and go, well, I know now that I'm looking at it with fresh eyes, this is horrible, or this should have been changed, and you didn't even pay attention to it. So I think it's good to have somebody, like you're saying, like you, that
Also,
pays attention.
Mark, pays attention, but then when it does work, it's everybody's win. And when it doesn't work, the worst conversation, and I have them often, the worst conversation I could ever have with anybody is 3 months down the line after you sign with somebody, nothing's happening. A year down the line, they never did anything for me. I was with them for a year. You hear this all the time. I was with them for years. I just gave all my clients and they never did anything for me. Here's the thing. It is your responsibility to weigh in on measured results and have a plan, check the plan, and change the plan every quarter until the plan works. If you've gone a year and ain't shit happening on the other side, and you come to me because you're starting to fish for other agents and say, I've been with them for a year and nothing happened, my first line of questioning is, well, what did you do wrong? Not what did the agent do wrong. It's oftentimes about the lack of communication, the lack of ability to confront or to have an agent set up a comfort zone with a photographer that says, when you're not happy, that's when you come to the table. When something works, we both win. When something doesn't work, we both lose. When
I think
something
that's good.
doesn't work, that check-in conversation, if it doesn't happen after it doesn't work and you've gone a year, shame on you, not shame on agent. I am not going to be the agent that says to any photographer that says, I don't understand. I've been with them for 3 years and nothing has happened and I don't understand. I'll say, you've been with them for 3 years and you have a big floating question mark over your head. There should be not question marks. There should be answers as to why it didn't work or why it's not working. If you just say to me, it doesn't work, I'm going to go, well, what did you do?
Well, I agree. But at the same time, I think there are times where, and I've had it, where I've had a rep and we talked, or we try to talk, and I'm like, hey, this is happening. Can you help me with this? And they're just kind of like, yeah, well, okay, let me see. Oh, that looks fine. And then you go, all right, well, how about, let's set up and for me, it's kind of like, I need somebody to help push a little bit,
Of course.
So for me, it's kind of like, okay, let's set up the plan for promotions or for meetings or whatever for this year. And then I go, okay, here's the deal. And then sometimes like, I don't want to do it. And then I didn't hear from the agent to say, hey, have you done this? We talked about you were going to have them done on this day. Have you done it? And I don't hear from them. Or I go, hey, I'm coming out to LA to have meetings, and let's go to dinner while I'm out there and talk. And they go, okay. And they flip through stuff and go, oh yeah, this looks fine. There's no, creative criticism. There's no help on it. They just kind of almost as if they don't want to do any work. They'll throw your stuff out there that you've done, but there's not a lot of help. And so those are the ones, and I've had a few of those, and it's frustrating on my end. And then the ones like you who I've had, unfortunately, they, for whatever reasons, they left and decided to be producers or
Right.
whatever. Those are the ones where it worked the best, where they would go, hey, we need this from you. And I go, you got it. And I'll put it out. I mean,
And
if you ask for something.
On fire, by the way, I just want to give you props. You're on fire when you're on fire. Like if somebody says to you and keeps you accountable, and you feel comfortable. Remember, Mark,
yeah,
when we started our coaching session, I had to do the work of creating a space that allowed you to say it exactly as it was for you, and then create a space where we go, okay, So here's what's not working. All we need to do is make that thing work. And the only thing that's going to make that thing work is a little bit of effort right around here. So
Yeah.
here's what you need to do. But until you can bridge the uncomfortable conversation that it's not working, that's the job before every year starts with any photographer, is lay out the roadmap for what the year is going to look like, and make that list. Here's what the agent's going to be responsible for, your to-do list. Here's what Mark is responsible for delivering, and making sure that you're on calendar for all of that. But that starts at the beginning of the relationship with a really like a long-term projection of like, here's what we're going to do in a quarter. Here's what I'm going to do in a week. So knowing, again, with that division of time that we started, because with you,
Yeah.
with any person, I start off with how much time do we have? Then we look at that time and we break the week down into, here's how much time I have to work on you. I might have 5 other people. So here's how, then when I have the honest conversation about how many meetings I can actually do personally just for you. Then
Right.
there's group meetings, and then there's, so it starts with that plan at the beginning of the year. Anybody that just wants to sign you and doesn't hand you what I would hand you, which is kind of a roadmap of, and we'll do this exercise actually afterwards. But that roadmap either gets started, and then on that roadmap, it goes, look, here's what we agreed that you would be doing. Here's what I agreed that I would be doing. When something doesn't go well, you'll be able to refer to this roadmap all the time and go, oh, here's why it's not going well. Here's why this didn't get done. So it's just, but it's all about agreement.
I agree.
At the beginning of the relationship, when you're in agreement about what you can do, because you've now had an honest conversation about the amount of time that you can devote and the amount of time the agent has. Once you've done that work, then you lay down the foundation, and then you keep each other accountable because you have it on paper. And
Which I think is good.
Agent needs to do it. I think in this time more than ever, because when people don't hear from each other, let me tell you, Mark, you will fill in the blanks in your mind's eye with what that agent is doing, and he or she will fill in the blanks in their mind of what you're doing and not doing.
Well, I think that's why your description of it as a marriage is good, because I think both sides need to understand that they have a part in this, and that both sides need to work, and that you're right. If it's not working, if it's been a year, 2 years, 3 years, it's not all the photographer's fault. It's not all the agent's fault. It's a combination of the two of you. It's kind of like any marriage. If the marriage falls apart, it's because you both didn't do something. It's not necessarily because he went out and cheated on you all day long.
Right. My main question is going to be, when did you stop talking?
Yeah.
Even with my friends that are fighting and, somebody wants to have a bitch fest with me, I am like, I don't gossip. I cannot get involved in that kind of a thing. My question only to you is, when did you guys stop talking about what you need? That usually ends the conversation, because I don't need to get involved in the he said, she said stuff. With that one phrase uttered, they go, oh shit, yeah, I stopped having conversations with this person about what I needed so long ago that now I can't even I can't even try to get you involved in this, because really where this begins and ends is communication. If you are a poor communicator as a person in general, and you're just an island unto yourself as a photographer, I highly recommend you do not seek an agent, because you will it will just boil down to blame and a bitch fest if nothing happens, if you can't communicate. And that means that you're going to fight. You're going to have disagreements about what needs to be done and when. But once that's out of the way, then the plan comes together and it's golden. But again, like I said, the most failed relationships that I have ever seen go awry are the ones that just stop talking about what they need.
Oh, I agree.
Not that I want to be anybody's counselor or psychologist. Please hire professionals to do that work. But when it comes to work, letting me know what you need, and also letting me know a little bit about what your life looks like outside of work, informs how I would coach you and how I would market for you.
Well, it's good to have that. I think it's good to know that, especially as a photographer that doesn't have a team around them. I think that's
Yeah.
important. Yeah, for sure. All right. So, last question. What is the strangest thing that's ever happened to you since you've been into this whole agent uh, deal?
Oh Lord! You mean besides dancing on tabletops with clients at 3 a.m.
Say that again. Did you
Besides
say
dancing on tabletops with my clients until 3 a.m. sometimes after
yes?
on a rap party. Um,
That
God,
sounds pretty nice. That sounds like a cool rap party.
it's always a cool rap party with me. Always, always, always. If I can make it happen, and I'm in the right place, health wise, I'm always like, let's go. We need to have a good rap meal, and then we're going to go boogie. Especially if we're, I always try to make it a point if I'm an agent producer, doing a job, or if I'm producing or whatever, I like to make it a point if we're shooting in a different city to make sure that I go out with the crew at a local bar, a dance club, wherever that is. And the clients usually like to join us. That said, there's lots of those stories, but that's not the oddest. That's certainly not the oddest, but certainly a lot of fun. So I became. You actually worked with Desiree Kennedy. She was on one of your. She's on one of your podcasts,
Yeah.
Desiree used to be my producer, so we used to do these. I don't know if you knew this about me, but image libraries were one of my main focuses years ago, and I started doing. I started doing massive image libraries all around the world. And one of my best clients was a tech client, a computer client. And I remember having to do a multiple leg shoot. It was being armchair produced from New York. I was the on-set producer agent. The client had known me for I had 6 years of dealing with this one particular client. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. And we had several legs of the shoot that needed to be done. So there was a New York piece, a New York shoot that went to Istanbul, Istanbul to Dubai, Dubai to Paris, Paris back to New York. And it was one of the largest shoots I will ever have had to do. And it was unbelievable. It was my first time traveling to Istanbul. It was my first time ever going to the Emirates. And I was so excited. And when in Istanbul, we were shooting on the streets of Istanbul. And I had this uncanny thing that I need to eat all the time. I have so much energy that if I'm not eating, like if I don't have a bowl of trail mix or something with me, anybody that has been my partner will always tell you, like, if you're doing calls with me, I'm eating as I'm working. For some reason, I burn a lot of fuel. So on this shoot, I had forgotten to pack supplies just in Istanbul. I thought, okay, I'll do it when I get there. But it was very early call times. We had to shoot sometimes at dawn, and there was just no time. It was on the plane, get out. So in Istanbul, I was picking up food for the crew and for myself, but we didn't have catering there. So we really just depended on local, street meat and things that were coming that we could get easily from vendors. So after the first pre-pro day, we'd done a tech scout. On the third day in Istanbul, I started to feel a little bit ill. And we were getting ready to shoot, and we went out into the streets that morning, and I felt the heat more than it was during a summer as well. So it was very, very hot. I felt the heat beating down on me, like really, really. I was sweating all the time, like through my clothes. I was like, wow, something is really going on with my body. I don't know what it is. When we were just about to leave Istanbul, I felt so sick. I started to vomit, and things were getting really weird. But I woke up on the day that we were leaving to go to Dubai, and my stomach had kind of distended quite a bit, and it looked really, really odd. And I was like, wow, is it just gas? Am I bloating or whatever? And it was like we had to get up, get out onto a plane, and fly out to Dubai. And as I'm on the plane going to Dubai, which was a long flight, my stomach started getting wider and wider and wider. I mean, literally to the point where I looked like and I'm a thin guy up top. So like you could see me from the side looking like I had swallowed, a small child, or a beach ball
God.
or something. And we're now landing in Dubai, and it is arid hot. And our first group of shots had to be shot in the desert, in minivans, driving
That same day?
through the day. We had to do a tech scout first and whatever. But in the meantime, I'm swelling. But the next day, so tech scout first day, so land, scout, shoot. And all the while, I'm still having these sweats and whatever, and I'm literally, and it's funny because I wish I could find the photographs, because of course we chronicled the entire adventure. But we get to Dubai, we have to do this. Now I'm really sick, and we are in hot weather, and there's absolutely no way that I cannot work. I have to be on the set. There was nobody that knew the client like I did, and we had a long shot list, and we're dealing with products that are made for desert dwelling. So it's like they're manufactured. This computer company is like hardwired stuff, like really we had to showcase the product. But in the meantime, we're like, okay, we got to do these shots, but we got to do them while we're driving, in motion, in the car. So I'm now sick as a dog. I literally have a stomach that's out to here. Like my belly was distended. So I had to do the entire shoot, finish everything in Dubai, looking like a pregnant yak. And to the point
God.
you will have pictures of this, by the way. I mean, we had some resting points while we're going through the dunes, but the funny thing about it was I wasn't really in pain, but I was absolutely not feeling well. It turns out I had a parasite that I had picked up from eating street meat in Istanbul. But you will have pictures of me working on my laptop. My stomach was so swollen that my laptop could rest on top of my belly, on the fold of my belly. So we literally have pictures of me from the side working on my computer, happy as a pig in poo, though, like had a turbaned up, like completely in my turban, like working from the side. So it was that. And then I couldn't do anything about it until I arrived back home. So I still needed to do the shoot in Paris and then back to New York. So it was fine.
Wow.
And then that actually started, from that shoot alone, I went to a naturopath when I finally got back. He had obviously diagnosed me. After some time, they couldn't find it at first. They didn't know what was going on with me. So it took me a while, but it actually made me the gluten-free person that I am today, because I found out through testing, really extensive blood testing, that it was a certain kind of parasite, and I would have to go gluten-free for a while to kind of clear out my system. And now I've maintained that throughout my life. And that's the first time I ever learned about gluten, that I had no idea that gluten, like I could have even had an allergy. But apparently that had done so much damage by that time that I was intolerant of wheat.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I became gluten-free. So that's my oddest adventure. Kind of super weird for me, but it was also the start of me actually getting into a healthier way of living. Like I'm still to this day gluten-free.
That was amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
So that was the crazy thing. I certainly have more fun experiences, but that was like, here's the rule: never eat street meat. Indissoluble ever. Like the lesson that I took from it is never eat street meat. But we got through it, and we actually had a super hugely successful stint with the client. So yeah, that was it.
Oh my God. Well, thank you again for that was a great story. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for all you guys listening. I really appreciate you guys listening. If you like it, thumbs up it, like it, subscribe to it, all that kind of stuff. And we will talk to you all again very soon. See ya.
Mark, thanks.